Welcome to a new Paradigm of Education podcast. I'm your host, Monique, and today we have our special guest, Sandi Schwartz, who I'll introduce in just a moment. The world as we know it has been changing. There's been an evolution in education that has been coming forth, and it's even more so since the pandemic. This podcast is not about the pandemic, but it's about how we can support each other to grow and learn together and create a new paradigm that's going to be fruitful for the children and the next generation of change makers. So we're bringing together all different types of people, business owners, teachers, philosophers, educators, and parents, people who may not necessarily consider themselves as educators, but a new paradigm of education is all about everybody taking the stance that they are educators and that we all have wisdom to share, and that will bring forth the new paradigm. That's what's needed. So without ado, I will introduce Sandi Schwartz. She is a mom of two, and she's an author, a journalist specializing in parenting, wellness, and the environment. She's the founder and the director of the Ecohappiness Project, and she's the author of another book, her forthcoming book, Finding Ecohappiness, Fun Nature Activities to Help Your Kids Feel Happier and Calmer. Her work has been featured in the Washington Post, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Scary Mummy, Very Well Family, and more. Her mission is to inspire and guide families to build a nature habit to feel happier and calmer. So I'd really love to invite you, Sandi, to introduce yourself to our guests, to our special audience today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Monique. This is a really great topic, and I'm excited to dive in. And yes, being a mom and a writer, I guess makes me an educator too, right? Because every day I am,
Yes.
trying to raise kids, and really my message is, from lessons learned from what I wish I knew as a child. So I'm hoping that other parents can pass along this information, which is about using nature for stress reduction and other mental health benefits. And like I said, I wish my parents had this handbook that I've been working on, so that other, kids would not really struggle with stress and anxiety like I've had to over the years.
Yeah, it's such an important topic, especially me as an educator, the idea of stress and anxiety, because as a parent as well, whatever I am, if I am feeling stressed when I walk into a classroom, or if I'm feeling stressed at home, that will just trigger my children, the children in the classroom as well. And that was one of my greatest lessons as a teacher, was to finally practice mindfulness, and actually not just practice it, just to become mindful, to become at peace with myself, to become that essence of what is needed. And from that moment on, actually, my classroom was very, very well regulated, and the children were much, much happier. So there's so much science out there around happiness, and the science of meditation and everything like that. And what I really love about your work, what we've been discussing, is the fact that being in nature is also aligned with mindfulness. And maybe we could just go into a little bit about your work around the Ecohappiness Project, and then also tie that in with how that's going to help our children as well. I'd love to hear that.
Sure. So I guess it goes back. Well, I've had a love for nature since I was a kid myself, and got very involved. And, that's what I chose as a college focus in college, was environmental studies. And I went on to be an environmental science communications professional. But then I also was dealing with stress and anxiety, and I had it all my life, but it really hit hard going through infertility. And then I definitely, looking back, had postpartum anxiety, which a lot of people don't even know exists. And so I went on a journey, and I'm like a life learner. I love to do research. And I was trying to find out, what can I do to ease these feelings, this edginess. And I stumbled upon the world of positive psychology. And that is all about mindfulness, tools like mindfulness, gratitude, awe, kindness, like giving back, volunteerism. And then nature is a piece of it that isn't as well developed in the positive psychology world, but it's the focus now that I'm honing in on. So I actually started a blog, my first blog, that I wrote about was very broad. It's called Happy Science Mom. And that looked at all these different positive psychology tools. And then over time, I realized I kind of came back to my roots, and I'm like, oh, let's really hone in on nature and the environment and what it can do for us, what we can do for it. And just this sort of amazing way that, if we my whole like kind of pitch is, if people start recognizing the benefits of nature for us emotionally, that it helps us feel happier and calmer, maybe they'll want to save it. Maybe with everything going on with climate change and plastics in our ocean, I'm looking for the next new kind of way to convince someone, like, can we save the environment? Because that's always been my mission. But now I see it also as this new bridge into the mental health world. So yeah. And then mindfulness, of course, is a huge piece of that puzzle. And, as I say, I have a book all about this. I have a whole chapter on mindfulness, but I say in the beginning of that chapter, like, and I have the mindfulness chapter in the beginning, because everything else involving nature, like, you won't feel that benefit, that impact, if you're not mindful. If you don't really absorb, you can look at the rainbow, but if you're not being mindful about it and really reflecting on it, then how's it going to benefit you? So yeah, mindfulness is huge. And it's such a simple concept, yet so powerful.
Wow, that really dropped in just then. I love that wisdom that you just shared, Sandy. That's amazing. Like, to be mindful, to be present to nature is so important. There were so many things I want to reflect back as well. I've actually always grown up by the ocean myself, and it's always been my outlet for where I've gone, just to emotionally feel better. Like, even in my childhood, even to this day, to my adult life, when I need to take a break or something, I will go to the beach, and I just know that I'm going to feel nourished in nature as well. And there's just so many aspects as a surfer as well. Like, I see plastics, I see destruction, and it really saddens me, actually. And I just can't help but want to give to nature, because it just gives so much to me, and it's my place of joy and happiness. So I naturally just want to help it. And I actually think it's beautiful that children are able to learn this as well, like, and not just learn it as in like, oh, okay, children, pick up rubbish, like, because what's really funny at school, sometimes teachers make it a punishment, like, oh, you must go pick up 3 papers, and it's a punishment, and that is wrong. It's like, it should be something that we're doing to I'm going to pick up rubbish because I want to, I care, and I'm a loving person. And yeah, I just feel like to be able to get to that state of actually that peace and that wanting to, I can see how you're saying that mindfulness really ties in, because otherwise people might just be like, oh, why should I do this? And that's just all coming from that place of the ego, where people are not feeling happy inside and not able to see the gift in giving is receiving, right?
Right. And it's like simple things. I was just thinking, it pops in my head when you're talking. It's like, so, all right, our kids might go play a sport outside, which is great. But if we give them the skills to also, take a moment while they're waiting on the fields and feel the cool breeze and take in a deep breath and notice the beautiful, the sun and, the surroundings, instead of just like so focused on the game, it's giving them those skills to think a little bit broadly and to have that appreciation and awe. And, awe is a really fascinating kind of there's new science around it, and that's, again, part of the positive psychology world. And they don't even really fully understand, because it's such a complicated emotion, because, but it really, it's almost, it's so moving. It can almost sometimes bring tears to your eyes if you're in awe. So, that's something that we can build those skills with our kids. And that's why I kind of call it like build a nature habit, because just little simple things we can do. And then they just grow up knowing that. And it's so easy.
I'd love to hear more about it.
Free.
Yeah, nature's free. And so with awe, just to share with you mean like this feeling of joy and curiosity? That was my, what is that what you're saying, what awe is?
Well, it's interesting. They can't even fully describe it, because they kind of use multiple words. And there's a great center out of Berkeley, University of Berkeley in California, that they focus on that. Decker Keltner is the expert now in awe. He's written some reports on it, but basically it's kind of like a magical moment. And you can have awe for good things and bad things. So, So like, let's say you're looking at a forest fire, that's like a negative, like awe, because you're like, whoa, how can that have be going on? Like, that's so massive. And why is that happening? But then you can have awe for looking at the stars and thinking about outer space and, just like the existence of we're on this planet and could there be other life out there? Like that's awe. A rainbow, a birth of a child, listening to an orchestra. So it's sort of this, like, it's not, we want to focus on the joy one, but there are other moments of awe that it just overpowers us. And it's a very, very deep emotion that it can give you, like they found when they did studies, it gives you like the tingle up your spine or the goosebumps and
It's
tears to your eyes.
amazing.
So yeah, it's really fascinating. And so, it's a piece of the mindfulness.
Mm. I'd love to hear more then about something you could share with myself as an educator or with parents about how we can just get out in nature and with awe, learn about the environment and also become mindful at the same time. Could you share some things with us? I'd love to hear that.
Sure. One thing that I've written quite a bit about and I've done myself, which was fun, is a nature poetry walk. So the premise of that, and you can do it anywhere, you could do it in a backyard, or you can go venture off to a beach or a park, a forest, whatever you kind of have access to, the mountains. And you bring along, a little booklet and pens and pencils, and it's all about mindfulness, because it's like going on the walk, but taking time to slow down and like bring in the scenery with your all five senses, even taste. Like, so I went on this fabulous nature poetry walk in Pennsylvania a few summers ago, and we were walking just like a regular walk. And then all of a sudden it was like, stop, take the deep breath. What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you see? What do bend down, touch and feel what's around you. And then even she was like, what do you taste? Like, what is the air, taste? Because sometimes it could be smoky or it could be sweet, like, or maybe it could be something you recently had to eat or drink, but it could be something in the air around nature. So you go and you do this, and the kids love it because it's giving them this opportunity to really see like new colors and new creatures and flowers. You're really honing in. On ours, we were in a place where there was a deer, and so all these like experience. Well, there was a deer, then we also saw a bee's nest, and there were all these bees buzzing above us in the tree. And then at the end, you find a nice quiet spot. Everyone can kind of sit down in a tree stump or wherever, or bring make a little, bring a towel or, picnic blanket. And then you start really writing down those experiences. We actually had like a matrix. I mean, it was adult, so it was a little bit higher level, but a matrix of like each sense that we had and what we observed. And then we end up writing poetry. And it was really cool because like everybody in this group wrote about the bees because they were like, whoa, there's a swarming, of bees here. So it's interesting because then each child, you can really, if you go in a group or multiple, family of multiple kids, you'll get to see what they experienced, what really stuck out to them. And it's probably a totally different scene. And then of course you can also then introduce the idea of awe, like what on that walk was awe-inspiring. Like staring at the deer, into the deer's eyes, like that could be very powerful. So yeah, that's a really great, project to do with your kids as a family.
I love that.
Example.
That's really, really beautiful. And that's something like, it's almost like a life skill that you can build upon, because the first time they may not fully understand what aura is, but then the next time it will just kind of open up something new inside of the child or even the educator, like about what aura is, as they sort of take that time to get still and to really to take it in. And I really love also that it can match a curriculum. If educators are looking for a curriculum for it to match all the senses and all of that, is like writing with imagery, and you could do alliteration, you could do like metaphors, you could do a whole lot of different things with that as well. Or you could just allow their own free expression to come through, which is probably my own preference. But I know as a literacy teacher currently, like I'm quite often using the senses just in my work on the computer and just saying, okay, well, let's use the senses, but this is just like beautiful, like to just do it out in nature, looking at everything, actually fully in feeling the senses rather than just typing about it. Like this is so beautiful and perfect. It's exactly what is needed. Yeah. And so what else can I ask you? So what about so was there any other guidance I've got here? How can nature enhance the education? How do they learn? So is how do you know how it's developing their learning more? Is it the or is how they're learning? Is that what you were sharing in the writing as well? Yeah.
Well, the big thing about nature when it comes to education is that studies show that it triggers curiosity and creativity. And so when I think, and again, I have a whole chapter on creative arts as as a way for nature and stress reduction to come together, because there's a lot of research on the mental health benefits of art, creative arts as alone, whether it's inside or outside, but then add in nature, and now you've kind of got like this double dose of of benefits. But one of the things, again, so nature stimulates creativity, and it helps calm us down. And when we're calmer, we're more open to learn new things. And nature also, just again being outside, it allows us to, or kids especially, to kind of open up like their curious minds and creativity. And so I look at it like, think of all the writers who go off to some sort of retreat in the middle of the woods, or at the beachfront, to write their next greatest novel, because looking at the ocean, looking at the beautiful trees, that something about it, but the science, and it's backed by science, that it just stimulates this ability for us to want to be more creative. So there's a lot of research as well about like outdoor classrooms. And an organization like the Children in Nature Network that I'm a member of, they have a lot, if you go to their website, they have a lot on, outdoor classrooms and the benefits of why it's important for kids to be outside. And, I think a lot of us had hoped to see more of that utilized, especially with COVID. But at least in the States, I know that their issue is safety concerns as well. So they tend to keep the kids locked inside for safety, which is really sad. But there's such benefits for the kids to be outside and learning, even just to go out under a tree and have a lesson, and read a book, or it's just such a difference. I think even, and there's been research too that like academic test scores go up when even like they're sitting by a window.
Wow.
Versus, some sort of dark, dreary classroom. So there's a lot of benefits to education and with nature.
I love that so much. And I know myself as a few things to reflect on as a writer myself, when I've written my most recent book as well, A New Paradigm of Education, that was created all in nature. I was surfing, I was just having the best time ever. And my book was just being like in my mind processed. It was my processing time. And I actually share in our book as well that it's really important that children are able to be given that space of processing time, to be able to have that space to then create. Yes. Because currently they're placed in the room and they're like, okay, you've got 40 minutes to create. Go and create in 40 minutes. And if it's not done, it's not done. And sometimes, as you're saying, like they need that space, they need that nature, they need that space to sort of, to get outside of their thoughts or themselves feeling stuck, and to be able to start writing. And it is a creative process, and it does take some children more time than it takes others. The same with adults. Like some days I could write and some days I couldn't write, and I was allowed to have that free space. So what I believe is a new paradigm, well, not just only, but part of it is having that space and that allowance of, okay, today I want to go and sit by the tree and I'm going to do the most amazing work, and it's going to be so highly productive because I'm going to use my time out there to enjoy that, rather than just kind of it being confined and then the frustration and the conflict that comes between, the student not getting it done and the teacher's like, well, why isn't it done? And it's just creating more conflict that's so unnecessary. And
right.
Yeah, it's so useful. And yeah, I even just having a window just for those few minutes, like even now I'm just looking at a window as I'm talking with you, and I can see myself, I just feel open, and I just have like that moment just to breathe and then to refocus and to come back to you. So even beyond science, just as a person experiencing in it, I think that's amazing as well. What I love that you share as well is you share tips for people who may not be able to get out in nature that much, but like they still have other ways that they could incorporate nature into their lives. Could you share about that?
Sure. Yeah. My big premise with this is that, I want to reach people that aren't your typical outdoorsy folks already, that not the campers and the hikers, because they've kind of got it down. The suburbanites and the urbanites and their kids and what they can do. And so as far as getting outside, I think anyone, even if you're in a high-rise apartment in New York City, if you have a balcony, utilize the balcony. You can grow plants and herbs on the balcony. You can, look at the clouds. You can, even do bird watching, like there's plenty that you can do from that space. And then of course, to venture out, most urban environments still have some sort of, grass or public park space to utilize. I actually grew up near New York City. My parents never really took me there, but as an young adult, I went there, and I was just so like shocked by all the Central Park and what it was like. When you're there, you feel like you are in the middle of a natural area. And so you walk a few blocks and then you're back to the urban world. But it's really kind of looking for those opportunities. And I know that not everybody does have that access. And fortunately, there are more and more groups trying to get children to those locations if they can. But even just sitting in a schoolyard, little grassy area would be helpful. And then if you're stuck inside, there's a lot you can do too. I know there are some people who may not agree with this, but I think you can utilize technology. For a lot of us, technology is just part of our kids' lives. And during the beginning of COVID, I challenged myself with a 100-day Ecohappiness challenge.
Wow.
And I said, every day I'm going to, I said, every day I'm going to try to do something to connect to nature. And I did it. But, on a really rainy day, one time I sat down with my kids at the computer and we went on a virtual tour of the like Ireland countryside. Like it was like a 3D kind of, experience. And it was wonderful. You can still appreciate and learn about nature, even from a screen. Of course, there's virtual reality now, and they're studying the benefits of that. Like even it's not going to be as good as the real thing, but it actually still produces some of the same, mental health benefits by looking at, being engaged in this, screen world of nature. So there's a lot you can do. And of course, even just find a window. You can set up, an easel in front of a window, and the kids can paint or draw what they see. They can write poetry. They can look for creatures. There's a lot we can do, and set up our space also with nature breaks.
Nature breaks.
Yeah, like mindfulness breaks, and a lot of mindfulness breaks now do incorporate nature. One of the easiest things is one of these mindfulness apps, meditation apps that have nature sounds.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. I mean,
calming,
birds, bird song and ocean waves and raindrops. I mean, it's very soothing.
Yeah, I used to do that quite often when the children would come in from a break. I'd play some kind of music, not always nature music, but it could be meditation music, but quite often the rain falling or those type of sounds that you're saying, the birds chirping and things like that. And you can actually do writing as well with the sounds in the classroom. So you can have, if they don't, as you're saying, if you can't get outside, you could just have them look at the screen, and then you could have them close their eyes to actually then listen to the sound and really hear the sound. It's like, well, you can't see it now, so what do you hear? Oh, I hear squawking, I hear rain, I hear, and then they go around and they share all the sounds as well. And
Oh,
it's really beautiful. You mentioned something about the eco happiness, and I realized we haven't actually really introduced what it is that you do. So could you share with me what is the Eco Happiness Project? That would be so cool. Thank you.
oh, sure. Yeah. So Ecohappiness Project, it's a website, ecohappinessproject.com. I have a blog on there. I have a free quiz you can take that gives you uh, a bunch of ideas for activities based on your child's like interests. So if people are not, a lot of parents are not really sure how to start building a nature habit. What do I do with my kids?
Mm,
So, you answer these 10 simple questions about your child, and you'll get an email based on like their interests. If they're more artistic, more adventurous, more into yoga and mindfulness. And then I pull out some activity ideas to keep everyone busy and engaged. And so it's all about eco happiness is all about how nature helps us feel happier and calmer. It's that intersection of nature and mental health. So, I really saw kind of a need for that. Like again, in that positive psychology realm, they touch on it because I've taken a lot of classes. They touch on it, but they really don't, focus as much as I wanted it to be. So I just said, hey, this is going to be my personal focus. My life's mission now is to educate people about it, inspire them, and to do it in a simple way.
mm,
Again, it just look out the window. And a lot of my work was inspired by two other authors. The first is Richard Louv from the Children in Nature Network, and he wrote Last Child in the Woods, and uh, he was a journalist himself, which is kind of cool because that was my
mm.
background or is my background. And he came up with this premise of a nature deficit disorder about 20 or 30 years ago. And it was that, kids are really suffering and struggling because they're lacking that connection to nature. So
Wow.
he's built this whole movement on the benefits. And he does talk a bit about mental health, but he's even broader, and talks about, kids with needs like ADHD and autism and how nature is helpful. And then another author, Gretchen Rubin, she wrote The Happiness Project,
Mm-hmm.
if you're familiar with her. And yeah, so that was part of my personal journey. I read that book and I was so inspired. And so that's kind of where, I decided to combine their work into a new realm, the eco happiness. And it's really exciting. And I really enjoy the work.
Yeah, I think it's just so brilliant. It's like probably two of my favorite worlds that emerge together. And I just love how the science is there to back it up as well. Like what you're saying, that it's just so simple just to be outside in nature, and that it can naturally, as you're saying, with all the chemicals, transform your body, and not have to go into a whole lot of studies around, how do I meditate? Not that I love meditation, but it's just a simple way of actually just being in nature is a meditation in itself, and so it's naturally triggering all of those chemicals and things like that. I really love that. I
Mhm.
wanted to ask a personal question. It's just for myself. Like, my daughter's still young, but I imagine when she's a bit older, I'm going to want to teach her about, recycling and being, caring for the environment and things like that. I just wondered, did you have any tips that make it interesting for kids, like that they want to make it fun and like playful, like with helping the environment? Because I actually have a big passion for helping the environment, like as well as being happy, of course. But I just think it's just necessary in the world that we live in, that's just full of, clutter and destruction. I'd really love to hear about it.
Yeah. And it's interesting you bring that up because when I was doing my research, there is a lack of that information too. Like there weren't a lot of books about environmental volunteering. And so I have a whole chapter on volunteering, and it's specifically environmental and nature related. And but one example that's also good for the mindfulness, going back, like when you asked the question and I talked about the nature poetry walk, is the beach cleanup.
Mm.
And you had mentioned that too, because a beach cleanup is very interesting. And I actually did my own personal survey on it. I surveyed 100 people after they did a beach cleanup and how they felt emotionally. And it is a little complicated because, most people did feel calm, but because you can get overwhelmed by and see, that's again this awe, like I think you can have a mix of good and bad all while you're cleaning up a beach. Like on one hand, you're like, wow, look how beautiful and awe-inspiring the ocean is, and it's so vast. And you can be like really empowered by picking up the trash on the beach. But then it can also be a little bit frustrating to think like, how did it get here? And why are we in this place in the world? And why, the plastic you find has been around a long time because it's so tiny now, and it almost looks like sand. And, so there's a lot, it's a very complicated issue, but, it's a really great learning experience for kids. And the biggest thing that they can say, the biggest anecdote to eco anxiety, which is the opposite of eco happiness, it's the worry of impending doom of plastics killing all the fish in the ocean, and then of course climate change, and there are a lot of people and kids struggling with this eco anxiety. The best anecdote to that is volunteerism, and getting out, and doing something, and doing what we can to contribute, and what we can control. If we sit there and go, I need to save the entire world and the entire ocean and every forest, it's just, that can be overwhelming. But if we give our children the skills to take action and what they can control, then they can build resiliency and help, like you said, a new paradigm. We need that for education, and we need it for the planet and for society overall. So it's all intertwined.
Yeah, totally. I really love that idea as well, of getting out in nature again, because you're again in nature, helping nature and helping the mind and everything. It's so clever. And I imagine in the house as well, like just there's simple things people can do in the house, which probably people have already been educated on, or maybe not, like the recycling bin boxes and reusing things, like doing art or craft from boxes and things like that. I think that can be helpful as well. Did you have any other like little activities around those type of things that you do with your kids? Or
well, there's a lot you can do also if you go on a nature walk, and then you can collect things that have fallen. That's the thing. You don't want to like go around picking, people's flowers, but there's so much you can find like on the ground. And I actually have a whole post on nature mandalas, which is one type of art project you can do with natural items. And so, you can do that. You can do collages. You can, it's really paint rocks. I mean, there's so many endless, ideas as far as getting creative with nature. I mean, even building sandcastles, right? I mean, that's a fun little thing to do at the beach. But yeah, it's really getting kids engaged and to appreciate what's there, and to respect it, and to be inspired by nature, because it makes them feel better, and then they'll want to protect it.
Yeah, so that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I just wanted some extra tips, so thank you so much. So if people are wanting to reach out to you or find you, where can they find you?
Sure, they can go to ecohappinessproject.com. I'm also on social media at Get Ecohappiness. That's GET Ecohappiness. And like I mentioned, I have that free quiz, so you can grab a whole bunch of activities. And I also have a free activity calendar, and that was based off of the 100-day challenge that I took. So I boiled it down to 30 days of activities, and that's then free available as well on the homepage.
That's amazing to have that, to be able to have like some kind of planner. Like that would be very useful for educators as well as parents, to have kind of something that they could do each day if they're not sure, well, what activity can I do today? It's always useful to have something tangible that they can go to. So that's really great that you've created that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing everything today around the Ecohappiness Project. And I'm blown away by the research that's there that I didn't know about, around how the environment can really, really shift mindfulness for everybody, especially our children, which is so important. And so I really do imagine in a new paradigm of education that nature, nature is definitely a huge part of that. And I won't go into my whole philosophy on that, because I have this whole big thing if I start talking about a new paradigm of all these magical things that I imagine that is going to come in the future. But I feel like it's like a step-by-step piece. And so this is one piece of the grander puzzle of creating a new paradigm. And everybody everybody has a place to play. So I'm really grateful that you're playing this part of the puzzle. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. And so everybody could reach out to Sandi Schwartz if they're wanting to have any more tips or ideas around the Ecohappiness Project or around how they can help their children. Okay, thank you so much. So thank you for tuning into a New Paradigm of Education podcast, and signing off with Monique Sayers and Sandi Schwartz. And I'll close with my favorite quote, which is, "Be the change that you wish to see in this world," by Mahatma Gandhi. Namaste.